Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the Hanged Man card. This card has a very personal resonance for me, so I'm going to probably firstly talk about that. And it was a card that came up a lot while my mum was dying. And if you don't want to hear about that, if you'd rather not listen to that, I will put a timestamp and skip forward to where I talk about my song choice, because I think the Kate Bush song I've chosen is actually really positive, despite what I'm just going to say about my personal associations with this card. So my mum was diagnosed with cancer about 12 years ago, and during that time, as soon as she was diagnosed, we knew that she wasn't going to recover. And actually she lived a lot longer, well, a few months longer than we expected, despite it being very advanced. And it was very, as you can imagine, of course, it was a really difficult time. And I'd been reading tarot for a couple of years, and these were the two tarot decks that I had, the Osho Zen and the Sweet Twilight. And this card kept coming up again and again during that period. And it seemed to symbolise so much of what I was feeling at that point that even now, I think 12 years later, when I get the Hangman, I still always associate it a little bit with that time period in my life. My relationship with my mother, although I loved her very much and still do, was complicated and was quite difficult. She'd gone through a lot of trauma in her life herself, and she'd responded to that, I would say, by becoming quite controlling. She was the boss in the family, and I moved a few hundred miles away from my family home when I was sort of grown up and an adult, and I wanted to keep that physical and emotional distance, but it made it it was especially difficult when she was dying, because part of me still wanted to keep that distance, definitely, and it was when I'd go up and visit her, it was difficult to see my mum suffering, but it was also difficult to see my dad suffering, who was caring for her, and my sisters as well. And my mum's normal controlling personality I felt, became more controlling. It felt like everyone was being pulled into this vortex of she was in denial a lot about the fact she was dying at first, and then her trying to desperately control the situation. And so there was so much going on emotionally for me, as there would be, but there were also feelings of anger against my mum, and then guilt for feeling that anger. And I'm sure these are common feelings that people feel when they're losing someone. And there was that sense of, we were waiting. We knew she was going to die, and we were waiting for her death. And of course, Hanged Man is the card before death in the tarot. And during that time, I felt powerless. I felt trapped. Neither of these cards, I'll just get the Rider Waite, because neither of these cards show Hanged Man upside down, but of course usually he is. And it was that feeling of, my life had been turned upside down, and I didn't know what to do. I felt powerless. I didn't know what to do while I was watching my mum suffering and my family suffering. And I suppose when you're trapped like that, when you're waiting, when you feel powerless and you're waiting for something to happen, and that thing that you're happening you don't really want to happen either, and all these feelings are overwhelming you, comes a point where it just gets too much and you almost do have to surrender to it. And there were a few moments of feeling that surrender during that time. And I would say in that period, and after my mum died and my dad sadly died 6 months after her, that although it was an incredibly sad time, of course, it was also a time when there were glimpses, there were moments when I did feel almost, I mean, not as strong as a spiritual awakening, but I felt close. I felt close to nature. I felt like something else was supporting me. So this is a card that doesn't just represent to me something about feeling trapped and suffering. It also represents that opportunity that is presented at those really low times, which is not to make those low times or that suffering to minimize that. I don't want this to sound trite or that it's not any less of a painful time, just that sometimes there is that hope, which I think is represented by that halo around his head. There is that glimmer of light. I think the Kate Bush song that I've chosen will be no surprise, because I think it's almost kind of written, I feel like, with this card in mind. And it is Suspended in Gaffer. If I can just zoom in a little bit so you can, or maybe I'll hold it up. So the lyric I've chosen is, "Not until I'm ready for you can I have it all." I'll just quickly read some of what Kate Bush has said about this song. "The idea of the song is that of being given a glimpse of God, something that we dearly want, but being told that unless we work for it, we will never see it again, and even then, we might not be worthy of it. Of course, everybody wants the reward without the toil, so people try to find a way out of the hard work, still hoping to claim the prize, but such is not the case. The choruses are meant to express the feeling of entering timelessness as you become ready for the experience, but only when you are ready." And I really identify with that feeling of having a moment where, life feels amazing because all the pressures of the ego maybe have just dissolved slightly in that moment. And then you almost get hooked in that feeling. And I suppose then the ego kicks in again and you kind of want to pursue it. I feel that is what the song's about. And I feel that is consistent with what she's saying there. This is taken from her video. I felt I needed to put her upside down because that is about getting a new perspective. I think there is this little figure here who's upside down in the tree, but I'm slightly disappointed when we get tarot cards that don't show the Hanged Man upside down, because I think that isn't important, that new perspective. And it's something, as a child, I used to love hanging upside down, and there's that seeing the world afresh, isn't it? Which is so important. And this path, I liked the idea of the path leading somewhere else. At the moment we're suspended, but there's somewhere else up ahead. And it looks a nice path. It looks an inviting path. We're not stuck here forever. That is my take on the card. Be really interested, as always, to know what you think. And this is my 12th, so the only other thing I was going to quickly say, this is number 12 in the tarot pack, and this is my 12th card that I'm sharing with you. And just to thank you, if this is your first time watching one of these videos, or you've been watching, since the beginning, thank you so much for your support. It means a lot. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your day and goodbye.